Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a challenge to speak before the Minister of Foreign Affairs because if I speak too long, it can become a diplomatic challenge and he might have to apologize on my behalf. However, once upon a time, there was a Harvard professor by the name of Arthur Brooks was traveling in Mumbai and in a city called Dharavi. Our Indian friends who know about Mumbai, Dharavi is not the most developed part of Mumbai. And he was chatting with a small time entrepreneur by the name of Krishna Pujari. And Krishna was running a small laundry shop, a small time entrepreneur. And when the conversation moves on, Krishna says to Arthur, who is a Harvard professor, I'm wealthy. I'm wealthy and I got wealthier before I got old. And Harvard professor thinks on his scale because when you compare the per capita GDP, under any circumstance, Krishna and US standards were, there's a stark difference. Then Arthur asked Krishna, why do you say so? How do you measure that you're wealthy? And Krishna says, I'm running a small laundry shop and I have built this business. So since I have built something, I call myself am wealthy. Not only I have built something, I'm earn a living. Since I'm earn a living, I categorize myself as wealthy. Not only am earning myself and I'm building, with the access that I'm saving, I'm helping people. So I build, I earn, I help. On that context, I classify myself as wealthy and I got wealthier before I got old. Now, when it comes to Sri Lanka, if you really look at it, this building, earning, and helping is all about human dignity. When you're only dignified, that you can help, you can build, and you can earn. And in Sri Lanka's context, if you know our history, we have been going through a roller coaster ride. We had 2 youth insurrections, we had a 30-year-long war, we had so many things. And even if you go back to 2015, since 2015 to 2024, the ride has been really rough. We had the central bank bond scam, we had a drought, we have a constitutional issue, then we had Easter attack, then we had COVID, then we had economic crisis, back to back. But for Sri Lankans, what really matters is the economic growth, growing before we grow old. And why I say that, if you look at Sri Lankans are obsessed with Singapore. We all wanted to become a Singapore. But when I go back to the numbers and check, the budget was presented like 5 days ago. Our government estimates 5% economic growth. If we grow at 5%, we will become a Singapore in 64 years. If we maintain consistency at 5%. If we slightly fall below for 3%, we will become Singapore in 105 years. If we really accelerate ourselves and grow at 8%, we will still become Singapore in 41 years. The good news is, I will be alive to see Sri Lanka becoming a Singapore, even if it's at 5% or 3%. Either in this lifetime or I believe in a rebirth, so even after the next lifetime, even if we grow at 3%. But the matter is, we have to grow. And the challenge is how we can grow together with regional cooperation. If we look at, let's forget about Singapore. That's a too high ambitious task. Let's even consider Malaysia. Sri Lanka will become the current Malaysia in 2042. That's after 27 years, even if we grew at 8%. So, coming back to my storyline, that we have to build, earn, and help, and getting wealthy before we getting old. How can we do that? That's the gist of my story. We have been targeting foreign direct investment. We have been targeting tea, coconut, rubber, apparel, and we have been doing this for the last couple of decades. But I think now there is a new window of green economics that has entered this formation. Because if you go to the World Bank Wind Atlas, you can see between India and Sri Lanka, there's this massive wind tunnel, which is a conversation in Mannar and also in Hambantota. So there is a new window of opportunity because everyone speaks about green. And I consider it as a more market openness that this concept has come. And Sri Lanka can act on three main themes. First, as an enabler in this green space by becoming an enabler for global decarbonization. Because we have to keep in mind, when we move for green, we have to explore more and more mineral resources, because these wind turbines, these capacitors, these transistors, it requires quite a lot of mineral resources. And Sri Lanka can move to become an enabler. Can we go to that slide, enabler? Yes, perfect. So we can become an enabler in this context, in this green narrative as a regional hub with connecting with India. Because when we move for EV vehicles, we need to explore more and more minerals. Imagine everything that we touch here, anything in the solid form or liquid form is all about minerals. You have to explore it from the elements. So that's the first space that we can work around. And the second space is to convert the green versions from the gray products, because the other option is that while we move to the green narrative, there are a lot of gray products which we can convert with green energy. It could be cement, it could be steel, which requires a lot of energy, which can convert through the green energy with regional collaboration. The third one is know-how. When we work on as enablers and converters, there's know-how that we have to develop within the region. Because know-how is a weird thing. I think one thing that is common between Sri Lanka and India is cricket. And we all know Lasith Malinga and Murali. Know-how is something that transfers when you work together. If you look at Lasith Malinga, we all know how Lasith Malinga bowls. He has a sliding action, he bowls Yorkers, and we can analyze his running length. But none of us, even after so much of evaluation, none of us can bowl like Lasith Malinga because he has know-how. And because of his know-how, probably that's why he get invited to Mumbai Indians, because only you get to transfer know-how when you are working together. Because it's the tacit knowledge. It's something in your brain that even you do not know, but it can only be transferred by working together. And that's what happened in California, because when all the top tech entrepreneurs working together, then your brain works in a way that you create synergies. And that's why if you're working in Japan, that there's a higher chance that you will get higher productivity, because Japanese are so obsessed with productivity that know-how transfer takes place when you are working together. And in this equation, what is missing in Sri Lanka is also the women labor force participation. There's only 30% to 35% women labor force participation. So if we can work together in this region, enhance with India and enhance with the region with women labor force participation in Sri Lanka and untapping that, and then we can move to the next stage of getting richer or wealthier before we getting old. Of course, we have so many other options as Sri Lankans, but I think working on this green space as an enabler and as converting the green energy to grey products as well as know-how is key. And my final point is connectivity to India. This has been a conversation, I don't know, for 30, 40 years, even before I was born. But we need to understand India is a growing market. And yesterday, as Kant mentioned, Sri Lanka is a unique product. That is, you cannot find anywhere in the world. But while we have beautiful beaches, nice mountains, everywhere is greenery, investors do not come for that. They come for investor-conducive environment. So to do that, we have to connect with India because India is a growing market and they will have 300 million middle class in few years' time. And that's a big market for Sri Lanka because even if you look at the US entire population, that's 300 million. So you have a market next door in few kilometers away, which is the size of US with the spending power. And that's why we need to connect with India. And if we connect with India, I think we will be in a more realistic time to see that we grow before we getting old. Otherwise, we will have to wait for 100 years or another century to see that Sri Lanka is growing to the next stage. So coming back to my point, the only way out for Sri Lanka is growing the economy. Because only if we grow the economy, we can keep up to the pace with the middle class Sri Lankans. After the economic crisis, most of the people, the intellectual audience left the country. Those who have stayed back need to have that aspirational value. And to do that, we have to grow the economy. And to grow that, we have to go with regional partnerships. And only if we go with the regional partnerships, only we will be able to grow and fulfill the aspirations of Sri Lankans. I think I'm getting closer to my time end, and I will wrap up with a quote of the former President of India, Abdul Kalam. And I'm quoting him because only when we work together and only when we work in line with our synergies, we can create global peace. If we work in fragmentation, we will not be able to achieve. And Sri Lanka has a new window to work on the green space with creating the environment for investment-friendly environment and take to the next stage. Here I quote Sir Abdul Kalam. When there's righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in the character. When there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. When there is harmony in the home, there is order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world. Thank you very much.